Hello, welcome and welcome back. Thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Esther and I'll be showing you how to cut and stitch this straight leg pant with elastic waistband. For this trouser, you would need a fabric of your choice and you will also need a 1-inch elastic waistband by your waist measurement. So to get started, my fabric here is for the front and I have it on fold. You would agree with me that 4 pieces of this makes a trouser. So 2 pieces for the front and 2 for the back. For the fold, you want to have your thigh measurements plus 3 to 4 inches, depending on how wide you want the down of your trouser to be. Start by marking a guideline. So from my guideline, I'm going to mark the hem allowance. Since we are drafting directly on the fabric, so we'll be adding all our seaming allowance and hemming allowance on the fabric. My hem allowance is 2.5 inches. You could do more or less. Next, I'm marking my desired trouser length. You need to know that for this, you need to add at least extra 1 inch. More is always better because the length can be adjusted. So right here I have my desired trouser length. Next is for me to mark from my waist to the hip measurement. Since it's a high waist trouser for me, I'm using 9 inches. And from the waist to the knee level. So I'm going to make the line visible as it can be. So we have the waist, the hip, the knee line, and of course the ankle line and the hem of the trouser. So by the side here, I'm going to mark the seaming allowance. For the seaming allowance of this trouser, I'm using 3/4 inch. You could use 1/2 inch, you could use 1 inch, whatever you like for your seaming allowance. Just the side seaming allowance. So now I'm going to mark out my imaginary band. Normally band is about 1.5 inches. So right here I'm marking imaginary band. So assuming that is for our band. So from that band point, I'm going to mark my crouch length. So my crouch length, I use my hip measurements divided by 4. So that is the value I use as my crouch length. The hip I'm working with is 44 inches. This is a size 14 on my measurement chart. So that is my crouch length. I'm going to go ahead and mark 1/4 of the hip measurement. So to find out your crouch extension, you could have your thigh measurements at that point, or you could use 1/4 of this 1/4 hip measurement. So divide the 1/4 hip measurements into 4 and mark it out. It's almost the same, but for an average woman, it's about 2.5 inches for the crouch extension. So most people, it could be 2 3/4 inches, like what I have here. I have 2 3/4 inches. So for an average woman, it's 2.5 inches. So you mark that out. In case your crouch extension from the calculation is different from you have your thigh measurement, which might be for some people, you can come down 3 inches and have your thigh measurement. So that being said, I'm going to find the midpoint of my crouch line now. Then I'm going to mark that on the knee line and also on the ankle line. So that will be where I will centralize all my measurements. So for a palazzo pants, you can use your crouch extension and crouch measurement and mark it straight down. You can decide to have it flared out depending on what you want. But for this, I'm going to just taper it in by taking away about 1 inch, and I'll place that measurement, centralizing it in that midpoint. So whatever you want to do, whether you want a pencil trouser or whatever, you want to make sure that that midpoint is like the midpoint of your measurement. So you place your measurements equally on either side of this. In the description, there will be a link on how to draft the trouser pattern for a more in-depth study. In case this is a little bit confusing or you're a beginner, I think you should watch that, and that will give you a more clearer picture on this. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and connect my points now. Now it's time to curve out the crouch. To curve out the crouch, I'm just going to measure that my crouch extension and mark that vertically, and I'm going to make a curve at that point. So now that we have connected our crouch, it's time to add back our seaming allowance. If you look at the side, I have a bit of a contour there. It means that if I cut this out, I won't have the initial seaming allowance I had marked. So go back and add back that seaming allowance on that curved area. Please don't worry about adding seaming allowance on the inner thigh. Trust me, if you draft it this way, it will fit perfectly. All you need is just a side seaming allowance to stitch this up. So now that I'm done adding my seaming allowance, this part is optional. You can leave the waist the way it is, but I have more feet when I reduced this waistline by about an inch. You can do 3/4 of an inch or half an inch, depending. We are trying to take away excess from the front. We want the front to be nice, even though we are having elastic at the waistband. So reduce it by an inch and slant it back, blend it back to the waistline like you would for your pencil skirt. So it's the same effect right here. So now that we have reduced it, it's time to add our allowance, the fold over for the band. So for the fold over, I am using 2 inches for the fold over. So you could do 2.5, 1.5, depending on how much you want to fold in. So you're folding this in to stitch. But you can separate this waistband if that helps. But I'm just going to fold this in and stitch. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out. So for the cutting, there's something I want you to note about the cutting. You're not just cutting this straight. You want to fold this in while you're cutting it. And you also want to fold over at the hem as well while cutting this out. You can see I fold over at the waistline and I fold over at the hemline. Those are the 2 fold over that you want to do. Then do well to cut the rest. Once again, I only added seaming allowance to the side, not to the inseam, not to the inner part of this pant. Don't worry, the back will take care of the inner portion seaming allowance. I'm placing notches so that it will help me when I'm assembling this. So you want to place notch at those points that you are folding over. So basically at this point, we are done cutting our front trouser block. If the front block is cut correctly, about 70% of your cutting work is done. So let's take care of the other 30%. Just place your front block on the back fold over fabric like I'm doing. You want to make sure that the back fabric is about 3 to 4 inches wider than the front and also longer than the front. Yes, the back of our trouser is wider and also longer than the front. So that being said, right here I have my front placed on my back fabric and I've pinned and secured it in place. So I'm just going to fold the hem over and I'm going to cut it in the shape of the front. Yes, the side of the front and back are the same. So now that I've cut the side, and I'm going to continue with the drafting. So firstly, you want to extend the line. You want to extend the knee line, the ankle line, the crouch line, and the hip line, the waist line. So all the lines that you marked for the front, just extend it because you'll be adding to those lines when it comes to the back. Where the front stop, add 1.5 to 2 inches to the ankle line, the knee line, even the hip line. So ignoring the crouch extension of the front, add 2 inches to that hip line measurement. So the quarter of your hip measurement, add 2 inches to that and connect these lines. Don't worry, we will find the crouch extension for the back. For the crouch extension of the back, you can go ahead and divide that quarter of the hip measurement plus 2 inches by 4. That should give you the crouch extension for the back. Or you can use 3.5 inches for an average woman. 3.5 inches works for an average woman. So I'm also going to mark the 3.5 inches vertically so I can connect my line. I'm going to just extend it to exactly where the crouch line is. So before I connect this line, I'm going to come down by half an inch. So you want to come down half an inch. That is for the back. On the crouch line, come down half an inch and going by about 1.5 before you connect this line. So I'm coming down by half an inch and I'm going in straight by about 1.5 and I'm connecting it vertically. You could do freehand or you could use a curve ruler, but this way you're not going to have excess at the back. So you can also measure the inseam of the front and place it at the back level. It's going to be like coming down about half an inch. Now to the waistline, you want to maintain the side for both the back and the front, but the inner part of this waist is going to be different. The difference is you are going to measure your crouch extension. So I'm just marking out the slope I had initially. Measure your front crouch extension and lift that center back up by that value. But if we had reduced it to eliminate bulge for the front pattern, go up by your crouch extension amount if you had reduced it. But if you kept it straight, please go up by about 1 inch or 1.5 inches maximum. So with this marking, we are pretty much done with the back block. So I'm going to fold the hem like I did for the front and I'm going to cut that out. Please, if you are unclear about any part of this, a link on how to draft a trouser pattern will be in the description box. You can check that video out. I'm sure it will be much clearer since I'm drafting directly on the fabric on this one. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do well to click on that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell to get notified each time we upload a new video. Now that we have the front and the back piece cut out, it's time to add pockets to our pull-up trouser. So my pocket, I like it about 1.5 inch below my band. So that's imaginary band you had marked out, that band, from that band place, mark 1.5 inches down. You can do 2 inches, you can do 3, depending on how low you love to stick your hand into your pockets. So from that 1.5 inches, I'm marking 6.5 inches down. So my pocket opening is 6.5 inches. So I'm just going to notch it 1.5 inch from the waistband and 6.5 inches down from there. So I'm just going to fold my fabric, but right here I'm going to just draw a guideline. I have 4 pieces, by the way. I'm going to draw a guideline and measure 10 inches down. So I have 10 inches by 8 inches. That's the measurement I'm using. Then I'm going to mark my pocket opening. Whatever opening you mark there, mine was 6.5 inches. So I'm going to mark an opening there. Then I'm going to just use freehand and curve out. You could find the center point if that's what you want and make a curve to that center point. But this is what I like. From the pocket opening, I'll just go in by about half an inch and I just make a curve and I cut my pocket out. So while cutting out your pocket, make sure that you have 4 pieces. So before I start to stitch my trouser, I like to take it and give it a press because it can get a bit confusing much later. So just press that fold over. So after pressing the fold over for my waist and also for my hem, it's going to come in much handy later. I'm placing the front right side together and I'm going to stitch the crouch line, and I also place the back right side together and I'm going to stitch that crouch. So after stitching the crouch line for the back and the front, I am going to place my pocket at that notch point. I'm going to pin it in place for all the 4 pockets, and I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and I'm going to stitch it down. So after stitching the pockets, I am placing the front on the back, right side facing. So I'm going to join it by the side. So I'm going to join the front and the back by the side. When I get to the pocket, I'll just go in and come back out and continue using my seaming allowance. So don't forget that you're using your seaming allowance, and also use about 1/2 inch seaming allowance for the inseam. So after stitching, it's time to stitch the waist band. So if you had given it a press before you started stitching, it will be very easy for you, just the same way it's easy for me right now. So you're going to place a pin to indicate the opening for your elastic band. You can also use rope for this trouser. So from there, you're going to stitch close the rest of your trouser waist. So that's the fold over there that we had. And also do well to hem the down part. So if you had given it a press, it's going to be very easy for you to hem at this point. So after stitching, here we are. So we have the opening for our elastic. So I'm going to pass our elastic through the waistline with a safety pin. So I'm using a safety pin to aid me with passing in my elastic. So you want to make sure that you pin and secure the other end so that it doesn't slip in. So when you're done passing the elastic, take out your pin and give that a stitch, and also do well to close that opening. And there you have it, the trouser is ready. Do well to make yours and enjoy the comfort, and see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.